The moment Jack Quinn spotted the sleek black Audi pulling into his small town's only gas station, he knew the driver wasn't from around here. What he didn't know was that the woman struggling with the ancient pump was about to change his life and the life of his 8-year-old daughter Emma forever. "Need some help with that," Jack called out, balancing a grocery bag on his hip as he approached. The gas station in Pinewood was notorious for its temperamental pumps that required a special touch, something only locals seemed to possess. The woman turned, and Jack momentarily lost his train of thought. She had warm hazel eyes and dark blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes were understated but clearly expensive designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than his monthly rent. "Is it that obvious I'm not from around here?" she asked with a self-deprecating smile that lit up her entire face. Jack chuckled. "The fancy car was my first clue. Here, there's a trick to it." He set his grocery bag down and demonstrated the perfect combination of jiggling and pressing that made the ancient pump spring to life. "You have to sweet-talk these old things." "I'm Hannah," she said, extending her hand. "Hannah Davidson. I'm in town for a few weeks." "Jack Quinn," he replied, noticing her firm handshake. "And Pinewood doesn't usually get visitors for a few weeks. Most people just pass through on their way to somewhere else." Hannah tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm here on business, sort of." Jack raised an eyebrow but didn't pry. In a town of just under 5,000 people, he'd learned soon enough why she was really here. News traveled faster than internet service in Pinewood, which wasn't saying much. "Well, if you need a tour guide, I've lived here my whole life. I know where all the good fishing spots are and which diner doesn't water down their coffee." "I might just take you up on that," Hannah said, her smile genuine. As Jack walked away, he didn't notice how Hannah watched him go, nor did he realize that his simple offer of help had just set something extraordinary in motion. Jack's day started at 5 a.m. like clockwork. By 5:30, he was in the small woodworking shop behind his house, working on custom furniture orders that kept a modest but steady income flowing. By 7 a.m., he was making breakfast and helping Emma get ready for school. "Dad misses. Thompson says we need to bring $20 for the field trip next week," Emma announced, pushing her cereal around in her bowl. Jack mentally calculated his budget. $20 wasn't going to break the bank, but with the electric bill due and Emma needing new shoes, it wasn't ideal timing. "No problem, kiddo. I'll write you a check tonight." He ruffled her auburn hair, so like her mother's. Catherine had been gone for 6 years now. Cancer took her when Emma was just 2, but sometimes Jack still expected to turn around and find her standing in their kitchen doorway. "Can I wear my blue dress today?" Emma asked, pulling Jack back to the present. "It's supposed to be cold. How about the blue dress with your leggings underneath?" Emma considered this compromise with all the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice before nodding her agreement. After dropping Emma off at Pinewood Elementary, Jack headed to his second job at the town's hardware store. Jim Harper, the owner, had been a godsend after Catherine died, offering Jack flexible hours that worked around Emma's schedule. "Morning, Jack," Jim called as Jack entered. "That lady who bought the Anderson property came in yesterday looking for some local recommendations. I gave her your name for custom furniture." Jack froze. "The Anderson property. Someone finally bought that old Victorian," Jim nodded. "Paid cash too, from what I hear. Must be loaded." Jack whistled low. The Anderson house had been on the market for years, a beautiful but dilapidated Victorian that needed more work than most people in Pinewood could afford. "Did she say what kind of furniture she's looking for?" "Nope, but she seemed impressed when I showed her that oak table you made for the library. Said she'd look you up." Later that afternoon, Jack was helping a customer find the right drill bit when the bell above the door jingled. He looked up to see Hannah Davidson walking in, looking both out of place and perfectly at ease simultaneously. "Hi again," she said when she spotted him. "Your friend Jim wasn't kidding. You really are everywhere in this town." Jack smiled. "Small town life, we all wear multiple hats." "What can I help you with today?" "Actually, I'm hoping to commission some furniture. I just bought a house here and it's practically empty." "The Anderson place?" Jack asked, already knowing the answer. Hannah's eyes widened slightly. News travels fast. Pinewood's primary export is gossip, followed closely by apple pie. Jack finished with his customer before turning his attention back to Hannah. I'd be happy to discuss furniture with you. I can stop by after work tomorrow to see the space if that works. That would be perfect. Around 6. Jack hesitated. I'd need to bring my daughter. She gets out of after-school care at 5. Something in Hannah's expression softened. Of course, I'd love to meet her. The following evening, Jack pulled his battered pickup truck into the long driveway of the Anderson house, or Hannah's house now, he supposed. Emma bounced excitedly in her seat beside him. Is this a castle, Dad? She asked, eyes wide as she took in the towering Victorian with its ornate gingerbread trim and wraparound porch. Not quite, but it's pretty close, Jack answered, feeling slightly self-conscious about his truck parked next to Hannah's Audi. Hannah opened the door before they reached it, dressed casually in jeans and a simple blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger somehow, more approachable than she had at the hardware store. You must be Emma, she said, crouching down to be at eye level with Jack's daughter. I'm Hannah. Your dad tells me you're in 3rd grade, Emma nodded solemnly. I can read chapter books now. That's impressive, Hannah replied with complete sincerity. I have some books inside that might interest you while your dad and I talk boring grown-up stuff. Would that be okay? Emma looked to Jack for permission and he nodded. Be polite, okay, kiddo. Inside, the house was a mix of faded grandeur and renovation chaos. Plastic sheets covered furniture and paint samples dotted several walls. Despite the disarray, Jack could see the bones of the place were magnificent. I know it's a mess, Hannah said, following his gaze. I probably bit off more than I can chew, but I fell in love with it the moment I saw it online. It's a beautiful home, Jack said sincerely, just needs some TLC. While Emma settled on a window seat with a stack of books Hannah had set aside, Jack and Hannah walked through the house discussing furniture needs for each room. Jack took measurements and notes, occasionally making quick sketches that made Hannah's eyes widen with appreciation. You're talented, she said, peering over his shoulder at her rough design for a dining table. Jim wasn't exaggerating. Jack felt his cheeks warm at the compliment. It's just something I've always loved doing. My grandfather taught me. As they moved through the house, Jack found Hannah surprisingly easy to talk to. She asked intelligent questions about wood types and finishes, but deferred to his expertise. There was none of the condescension he sometimes encountered from wealthier clients who came up from the city. So what brings you to Pinewood? Jack finally asked as they made their way back downstairs. It's not exactly a hotspot for. He gestured vaguely, whatever it is you do. Hannah laughed. I'm in finance, investment management specifically, but I can work remotely and she paused. I needed a change. My life in Boston was all spreadsheets and skyscrapers. Something about this place called to me. There was more to the story Jack could tell by the way her eyes drifted, but he didn't push. Well, Pinewood has its charms, he said instead. Though the coffee shop closes at 7, and the movie theater only shows films that are already out on DVD. Sounds perfect, Hannah replied, and Jack couldn't tell if she was being sarcastic or sincere. Later that night, after tucking Emma into bed, Jack sat at his kitchen table sketching more detailed designs for Hannah's furniture. He found himself wanting to impress her, to create pieces that would complement both the house's Victorian character and Hannah's more modern sensibilities. It was just professional pride, he told himself. Nothing more. Over the next 2 weeks, Jack found himself spending more time at Hannah's house than he'd anticipated. What started as consultations about furniture evolved into Hannah asking for recommendations about local contractors, which then somehow turned into Jack helping with some of the smaller renovation projects himself. You really don't have to do this, Hannah protested one Saturday as Jack replaced a section of rotted wood on her porch while Emma played with a neighbor's dog in the yard. I'm sure you have better things to do with your weekend, Jack shrugged. I don't mind. Besides, I'd feel responsible if my furniture ended up in a house with a collapsed porch. The truth was, he enjoyed spending time with Hannah. She was different from anyone he'd ever met, sharp and successful, but also surprisingly down to earth. She asked Emma about school with genuine interest and remembered details about Jack's life that he mentioned only in passing. One evening, Hannah invited them to stay for dinner after Jack finished installing some shelves in her study. She was apologetic about the simple pasta she served, but it was delicious, and Emma declared it even better than Dad's, and he makes the best spaghetti ever. High praise, Hannah laughed, refilling Jack's wine glass. I don't cook often in Boston, too many takeout options and not enough time. Do you miss it? Jack asked. The city, Hannah considered the question. Parts of it. I miss my favorite bakery and being able to walk everywhere, but I don't miss the noise or the pace. She looked around her half-renovated dining room. This feels right somehow. Jack studied her face in the candlelight. There were moments when Hannah seemed to carry a weight he couldn't identify, a shadow that occasionally crossed her expression when she thought no one was watching. Later that week, Jack ran into Hannah at Pinewood's only decent coffee shop. She was typing intently on her laptop, surrounded by papers covered in numbers and graphs. When she saw him, she quickly closed the computer. Sorry to interrupt, Jack said, coffee in hand. Working? Always, Hannah sighed, but she smiled and gestured to the empty chair across from her. The renovation team has taken over the house today, so I escaped here. Jack sat down. How's it coming along? Slower than I'd like, faster than I expected. She took a sip of her coffee. Your furniture pieces are going to be the highlight. I can't wait to see them finished. I've completed the dining table and chairs, Jack said. I could deliver them next week if you'd like. I'd love that. Hannah hesitated. Actually, I was wondering if you and Emma would like to join me for the Founders' Day festival this weekend. You mentioned it's a big deal in town, and I thought it might be fun to experience it with locals who can show me the ropes. Jack tried to ignore the small flutter in his chest at the invitation. Emma would love that. She's been talking about the carnival games for weeks. And you? Hannah asked, her eyes meeting his. I'd enjoy it too, he admitted. The Founders' Day festival transformed Pinewood's modest town square into a vibrant celebration of local history and community. Colorful booths lined the streets, the smell of funnel cakes and barbecue filled the air, and children darted between games and rides. Jack met Hannah by the town gazebo, Emma bouncing excitedly at his side. Hannah had dressed casually in jeans and a light sweater, her hair in a simple braid. She could have passed for any local mom, except for the designer sunglasses perched on top of her head. I brought something for Emma, Hannah said after greeting them, pulling a small envelope from her purse. Tickets for the rides and games. I wasn't sure if she'd want them. You didn't have to do that, Jack started, but Emma's face lit up. Thank you, Miss Hannah, she exclaimed, accepting the tickets with careful hands. Hannah smiled. You're welcome, Emma, and please, just Hannah is fine. As they navigated the festival, Jack found himself seeing his hometown through new eyes. Hannah asked questions about everything, the history behind the bizarre tradition of the mayor jumping into the lake, fully clothed, the significance of the apple pie contest that apparently caused a family feud in 1987, the reason why the high school band played the same 3 songs every year. You're getting the full Pinewood experience, Jack laughed as they watched Emma attempt to toss rings onto bottles at one of the game booths. Thrilling, isn't it? Actually, yes, Hannah replied, her expression genuine. There's something wonderful about a community that knows its own traditions and celebrates them, even the quirky ones. Especially the quirky ones. When Emma won a small stuffed penguin at the ring toss, her face glowed with pride. Look what I got, Dad and Hannah. That's awesome, kiddo. Jack high-fived his daughter. You know what? Hannah said. I think this calls for ice cream. I heard Martin's has the best in town. Martin's is the only ice cream in town, Emma informed her solemnly, but it's really, really good. As they sat eating their ice cream cones, Jack couldn't help but notice how right it felt, the 3 of them together, laughing about the festival's eccentricities. Emma had warmed to Hannah completely, asking her questions about Boston and whether she had ever seen a real whale on a whale-watching tour. When Emma spotted her best friend Lily across the square, she begged to go say hello. Jack let her go, keeping a watchful eye as she ran to meet her friend and Lily's parents, who waved at Jack. She's an amazing kid, Hannah said, watching Emma. You've done a wonderful job with her. Thanks, Jack replied. It hasn't always been easy, but she makes it worth it. If you don't mind my asking. Emma's mother, Jack took a deep breath. He didn't talk about Catherine often, but with Hannah, the words came more easily than expected. Cancer. Emma was just 2. Some days it feels like a lifetime ago, and other days, he trailed off. Hannah's hand covered his briefly. I'm so sorry, Jack. We've made it work, he said after a moment. The town has been amazing. When Catherine was sick, people I barely knew were dropping off meals, offering to watch Emma. After she died, Jim gave me the flexible job at the hardware store. The school has been great about working with my schedule, he shrugged. Small towns get a bad rap sometimes, but when it matters, people show up. Hannah was quiet for a moment. That's what I've been missing, I think. In Boston, I have colleagues and acquaintances, but not community. Not people who would just show up. Something in her tone made Jack look at her more closely. Hannah, are you okay? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Just thinking about choices, the paths we take. She shook her head as if to clear it. Come on, I think I saw a booth selling those apple cider donuts you claimed would change my life. By the time the festival's closing fireworks began, Emma was exhausted but determined to stay awake. The 3 of them found a spot on the town green, spreading out a blanket Hannah had thought to bring. Emma nestled between them, her new stuffed penguin clutched tightly in her arms. Today was perfect, Hannah said softly as the first colorful bursts lit up the night sky. Thank you for sharing it with me. Jack looked over at her, the fireworks reflecting in her eyes. Thank you for wanting to experience it. As Emma gradually slumped against his side, finally giving in to sleep despite the booming fireworks, Jack felt something shift inside him, a door opening to possibilities he hadn't allowed himself to consider in years. The following Wednesday, Jack delivered the completed dining set to Hannah's house. The renovation was progressing, walls had been repainted, floors refinished, and the kitchen was in the midst of a major update. Jack, it's absolutely beautiful, Hannah breathed as she ran her hand over the smooth oak surface of the table. Better than I imagined. Pride swelled in Jack's chest. He'd put extra care into this piece, working late into the nights after Emma was asleep. The table was his best work, solid oak with subtle Victorian-inspired details that complemented the house while maintaining a clean, contemporary feel. I'm glad you like it, he said, watching as Hannah circled the table, admiring the chairs with their curved backs and hand-carved details. Like it? I love it. This is heirloom quality work, Jack. He helped her position the set in the dining room, and they stood back to admire the effect. The table transformed the space, anchoring it with warmth and craftsmanship. I should get going, Jack said, checking his watch. Emma has soccer practice today. Of course, Hannah nodded. Oh, before you go, I found something in the attic I thought might interest you. She disappeared into the hallway, returning with a small wooden box. It looks handmade. I thought maybe you could tell me about it. Jack carefully examined the box. It was old but well-crafted, with dovetail joints and a hand-carved pattern of oak leaves on the lid. This is beautiful work, probably made around the 1920s or 30s. He ran his fingers over the smooth corners. Whoever made this was a true craftsman. That's what I thought, Hannah said, watching him with interest. You recognize quality because you create it yourself. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Jack forgot where he was. There was something in Hannah's gaze, a warmth, an invitation perhaps that made his heart beat faster. The moment was broken by Jack's phone buzzing with a text from the soccer coach asking if he could bring extra water bottles. I really do need to go, he said reluctantly. Of course. Hannah walked him to the door. Jack, I was wondering if you and Emma might like to come over for dinner this Friday. I'd like to thank you properly for all your help. You don't need to thank me, I want to, she interrupted. Please, how could he say no when she looked at him like that? We'd love to. When Friday evening arrived, Jack found himself spending more time than usual getting ready. He told himself it was just because they were going to Hannah's nice house, not because he cared about how he looked for her specifically. Emma, meanwhile, had changed outfits 3 times before settling on her favorite dress with leggings underneath, insisting on wearing the sparkly headband her aunt had given her for Christmas. You look beautiful, kiddo, Jack told her as they drove to Hannah's. Special occasion. Emma shrugged with the exaggerated casualness only an 8-year-old could manage. I like Hannah. She listens to me like I'm a grown-up. Jack smiled. I like her too. When Hannah opened the door, Jack momentarily lost his ability to speak. She was wearing a simple blue dress that made her eyes look even more striking than usual, and her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. Wow, you both look so nice, Hannah said, ushering them inside. Emma, I love your headband. The house had transformed in the week since Jack had last seen it. Most of the renovation chaos had been cleared away, and the rooms now flowed together with a cohesive, elegant simplicity. Jack was pleased to see his dining table set beautifully with candles and what appeared to be real china. Something smells amazing, he said as they followed Hannah toward the kitchen. I made lasagna. I remembered Emma mentioning it was her favorite. Emma beamed. You remembered. Dinner was relaxed and joyful. Hannah had prepared a meal that catered perfectly to both adult and 8-year-old tastes, and conversation flowed easily. Emma dominated much of the discussion with stories about school and soccer, while Jack and Hannah exchanged amused glances over their wine glasses. After dinner, Hannah brought out a board game she'd purchased specifically with Emma in mind, and the three of them played together in the living room. Jack couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed so much or felt so at ease with someone outside his immediate circle of family and lifelong friends. When Emma began yawning despite her protests that she wasn't tired, Jack knew it was time to head home. Hannah walked them to the door, crouching down to accept the hug Emma spontaneously offered. Thank you for dinner, Jack said as Emma skipped toward the truck. It was perfect, Hannah smiled. I had fun. It's nice having people to cook for. There was a moment of hesitation between them, a shared pause filled with unspoken possibilities. Jack almost leaned in, almost bridged the small distance between them, but uncertainty held him back. Good night, Hannah, he said instead. Good night, Jack, she replied softly. As October progressed, Hannah became a regular presence in Jack and Emma's life. She joined them for Emma's soccer games, cheering enthusiastically from the sidelines. She appeared at the hardware store with coffee when Jack was working the Saturday morning shift. She helped Emma with a school project about different states, sharing stories about places she'd visited. Jack found reasons to stop by her house delivering furniture pieces, checking on renovations, dropping off a book he thought she might enjoy. Each time, their conversations lasted longer, and the air between them grew heavier with unspoken feelings. The town noticed. Jack caught knowing looks from Jim at the hardware store and fielded not-so-subtle questions from Emma's teacher at parent-teacher night. Even Emma had begun casually including Hannah in her references to weekend plans, as if her presence was now expected. Dad, Emma said one evening as Jack tucked her into bed, do you like Hannah as a girlfriend? Jack nearly dropped the book he was holding. What makes you ask that, kiddo? Emma gave him a look that suggested she found adults incredibly dense sometimes, because you smile different when she's around, and you always smell nice when we're going to see her. Jack struggled for words. Hannah is a good friend. Mom would want you to be happy, Emma said quietly, with a wisdom beyond her years that sometimes took Jack's breath away. I asked Grandma, and she said so too. Jack kissed her forehead. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart, Emma replied matter-of-factly. You just didn't notice. Jack laughed, but her words stayed with him long after she fell asleep. Would Catherine want him to move on? He thought she would. They'd talked about it during those final difficult months, her extracting a promise from him not to spend his life alone, to find happiness again someday. Was Hannah that happiness? The question kept him awake far into the night. The following week, as autumn painted pinewood in brilliant reds and golds, Jack was working in his woodshop when Hannah appeared in the doorway. Your neighbor said I could find you back here, she explained, looking slightly uncertain. Is this a bad time? Not at all, Jack said, setting down his tools and wiping his hands on a rag. Come in. Hannah stepped into the small workshop, her eyes taking in the tools hung neatly on the walls, the work in progress on his bench, the fine layer of sawdust that covered everything despite Jack's best efforts to keep the space clean. So this is where the magic happens, she said, running her fingers along the edge of a partially completed bookshelf. Hardly magic, just patience and practice. Jack suddenly felt self-conscious about the modest space. What brings you by? Hannah took a deep breath. I need to talk to you about something. Something I should have told you from the beginning. Jack's stomach tightened. Is everything okay? Yes, I think so. I hope so. She looked directly at him. Jack, I haven't been completely honest about why I came to Pinewood. Jack leaned against his workbench, waiting. Whatever it was, Hannah was clearly struggling to say it. I told you I work in finance, which is true. What I didn't mention is that I own my own investment firm, a rather successful one. She paused. Very successful, actually. Jack nodded slowly. I figured you were doing well, given the house and the car. It's more than that. Hannah twisted her hands together. Forbes listed me as one of the top 40 financial advisors under 40 last year. The firm manages over $2 billion in assets. Jack blinked, trying to process this information. $2 billion? Yes. Hannah's voice was barely above a whisper. I'm what people would call wealthy, Jack, very wealthy. Jack ran a hand through his hair. Okay, but why keep that a secret? And why come to Pinewood of all places? Hannah paced the small workshop. I grew up in a town not unlike this one, in western Massachusetts. My parents owned the local pharmacy. We were comfortable but never rich. After college, I fell into investment banking and discovered I had a knack for it. I built my firm from nothing, and it just grew beyond anything I ever imagined. She paused, looking out the small window toward Jack's modest house. But success came with complications. In Boston, everyone wanted something from me: my money, my connections, my influence. The last man I dated turned out to be more interested in having me invest in his startup than in actually being with me. Jack could see the hurt in her eyes as she continued. When my assistant showed me the listing for the Anderson house, something about Pinewood just called to me. I thought I could come here, renovate the house, maybe use it as a weekend place. But then I met you and Emma, and she met his eyes. I didn't tell you the truth because for once someone was interested in me for me, not for what I could do for them. Jack was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. I appreciate you telling me now, but Hannah, did you really think I would treat you differently if I knew? I didn't know you then, she said quietly. And once I did know you, I was afraid of changing how things were between us. I'm sorry, Jack. I should have trusted you sooner. Jack stepped closer to her. Hannah, I don't care if you're worth $2 or $2 billion. That's not why he stopped, suddenly aware of what he'd been about to say. Hannah looked up at him, hope and fear mingled in her expression. Why you what? Why I fell for you, Jack finished softly. Your money doesn't change who you are: the woman who remembers my daughter's favorite foods, who cheers at soccer games, who gets excited about small town festivals. That's who I care about. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. Really? Instead of answering, Jack closed the distance between them, cupping her face gently in his hands. Really, he whispered before finally kissing her. Her lips were soft against his, and she melted into him as if she'd been waiting for this moment as long as he had. When they broke apart, Hannah's eyes remained closed for a moment, as if savoring the feeling. I've wanted to do that since the Founders' Day festival, Jack admitted. Hannah smiled. I've wanted you to do that since you fixed the gas pump for me. As autumn turned to winter, Hannah became a fixture in the Quinn household. She and Jack took things slowly, mindful of Emma's feelings, but the little girl seemed delighted by the development. When Hannah helped decorate their Christmas tree and stayed late into the evening after Emma went to bed, it felt natural and right. I've been thinking, Hannah said one snowy January evening as they sat by the fireplace in her now fully renovated Victorian. The commute to Boston is becoming impractical in this weather. Jack nodded, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in his stomach. Here it was the moment when Hannah would realize that her real life was back in the city, not in their small town with a woodworker and his daughter. So I'm considering opening a satellite office here in Pinewood, she continued. There's that empty storefront on Main Street. It would be small, just me and maybe an assistant, but I could handle most of my business remotely with occasional trips to Boston. Jack stared at her. You want to stay in Pinewood, permanently? Hannah's expression grew uncertain. Unless that's not what you want. Jack pulled her into his arms. It's exactly what I want. I just didn't dare hope you'd choose this town, choose us over your life in Boston. Jack, Hannah said, framing his face with her hands, you and Emma are my life now. The rest is just geography and logistics. In early spring, exactly 6 months after Hannah first arrived in Pinewood, Jack took her to the lake where he and Emma often went fishing. The water sparkled in the afternoon sun, and wildflowers dotted the shoreline. I have something for you, Jack said, reaching into his pocket. Hannah watched curiously as he produced a small wooden box similar to the antique one she'd found in her attic, but newly crafted with delicate inlays of different woods, forming a pattern of intertwined hearts. I made this, he said unnecessarily, his voice rough with emotion. Open it. Hannah's hands trembled slightly as she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a cushion of velvet, was a ring not ostentatiously large or flashy, but beautifully crafted with a vintage setting that complemented the Victorian aesthetic she loved. Jack, she breathed, looking up to find him on one knee before her. Hannah Davidson, you came to this town looking for a place to belong, and you found it with me and Emma. You've brought joy and laughter back into our lives in ways I never thought possible. Jack took a deep breath. I know I'm just a small-town woodworker, and you could have anyone. Stop right there, Hannah interrupted, tears streaming down her face. You are not just anything. You are everything I've ever wanted and never thought I'd find, Jack smiled. Then will you marry me? Will you make our family complete? Yes, Hannah whispered, pulling him to his feet. 1,000 times yes. When they told Emma that evening, her reaction was one of exasperated relief. Finally, I've been waiting forever, Jack laughed. It's been 6 months since Hannah moved here. Emma rolled her eyes in perfect pre-teen fashion, despite being only 8. That's practically forever, Dad. As they embraced in a family hug, Jack reflected on how quickly life could change. One moment, he was helping a stranger with a gas pump, and now that stranger was his fiancée, soon to be Emma's stepmother, and the missing piece their family hadn't known it needed. They married that summer in a simple ceremony in Hannah's, now their backyard. Emma served as both flower girl and best daughter, scattering petals, and then standing proudly beside her father as he recited his vows. The entire town seemed to attend, from Jim at the hardware store to Emma's teachers and soccer coach. Hannah's wealth remained largely invisible in their daily lives, though it did enable them to establish a foundation supporting arts education in Pinewood schools and a scholarship fund for local students. Jack continued his woodworking, opening a proper showroom in town where customers from increasingly far away came to commission his now sought-after furniture. 2 years later, the Quinn family welcomed twins, a boy and a girl who had Emma's auburn hair and Hannah's hazel eyes. As Hannah watched Jack gently rock their son while Emma carefully held her baby sister, she marveled at how a wrong turn into a small town had led her exactly where she needed to be. I love you, Jack whispered as he joined her on the porch swing, babies finally asleep and Emma helping her grandmother bake cookies in the kitchen. I love you too, Hannah replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. Thank you for showing me around your small town, Mr. Quinn, Jack smiled. Thank you for falling for me, Mrs. Quinn. As they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors over Pinewood, both knew that some wrong turns led exactly where you're meant to be.